Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and it's been 27 years since we started a year with 4 wins. Jack Viney was just 9 days old at the time. Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor was the number 1 song on the Australian charts. Hey Hey It's Saturday was the number 1 show on TV, and Ray Martin was just about to win his 3rd Logie Award. The internet was in its infancy, smartphones did not exist, and Demonland was just a glint in my eye. Got a full deck back on board again this weekend. It seems that wins bring everybody out of the woodwork. Great Viney, good evening. How are you?
I'm okay, Andy. I'm having a little bit of trouble breathing up here in the rarefied air near the top of the ladder, so a bit of an unfamiliar terrain for us.
It certainly is. It's not often we're sort of up there with the best of them. So we're going to take it still 1 week at a time. Also joining us tonight, long-time Demon Ladder George. Good evening, George.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, everyone. 4 wins in succession. So I've rolled the bandwagon out of the garage and into the driveway. I've got the wheels back on and oiled up, and the bathwater is well and truly topped up. So we're ready to go.
Love drinking that bath water. I can't get enough. When we win, you want to watch everything, listen to everything. When we lose, you just want to shut everything off. But it's great to be able to watch every footy TV show. Bim Man, welcome back to the Demonland podcast. How are you? You might have to unmute yourself there.
I'll start again. Good evening, Demonlanders. Good evening, fellas. And Andy, I'm keeping a lid on it. We still haven't beaten anyone above us. And that gag went straight past you last week from George. So
did it?
You just went with the glass half empty vibe and went, yeah, no, you're right. So I thought I'd try it one more time. So yeah, no one above us is. We've beaten no one above us, no one of note really. But, the last premiers.
I must say that there's a lot of moving parts. When you're sort of hosting the podcast, and it's things like that might slip by the keeper every now and again. But I might say it might happen tonight. I'm not feeling great. I passed a COVID test. Well, is that the good? Yeah, negative is passing it, I guess. So, but yeah, hopefully. You can hear by the sound of my voice, I'm not 100%, but let's get stuck into discussion of the match. But before we'll talk about some individual efforts soon, but I thought it might be worth mentioning, that despite the fact that, we should have been further in front as a result of the inaccuracy, which can be attributed, I guess, to the inclement weather. But I thought it was very encouraging and a testament to the new look D's outfit that we're seeing, that we were able to withstand Geelong, a comeback from 30 points. Well, they were 30 points down, which was whittled away to 12 points. I truly believe that the Demons teams of the past would have crumbled and perhaps lost the lead and not be able to wrestle control back. But we did that. We really did that. Big man, you got any insights into what we did to sort of right the ship and go on with it?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. If you look at all of the games, I think Goodwin noted this in his presser. It's been a feature of every game. The teams come at us, the opposition's come at us at some point, and we've weathered the storm. And there's a lot of talk about trust in the media in the last few weeks around the Demons, and that came out again this week. And that, I think that the players trust themselves, the players trust the system, and we might talk about that identifiable brand a bit later, Andy. But I think there's a few factors. One, the system, the players are very confident in the system that they've got in place. They've got total buy-in. They're doing the right things. But it sort of becomes a virtuous cycle, doesn't it? Because they showed last year a few times they were a resilient footy team on a few occasions, but they've been... that's very much been a theme this year. And the more that happens, the more it becomes a self-reinforcing event in some ways. And I don't know about you, but even when they pushed the second goal, or both of their goals late in the third quarter, felt to me as if they were against the grain. Both of them came after we had forward half pressure and the ball just leaked out the back and got away from us. I didn't feel any particular nervousness, and that's the way they looked. And I thought the first 4 or 5 minutes of that last quarter was as impressive. 4 or 5 minutes of footy, just there. I think that their maturity. I think the other factor, Andy, is that maturity is that they're starting to get a core of players around the 100-game mark with some older players like Jones and I was going to say Melksham, or Melksham. That's with experience comes a hardened sort of AFL, athletic body and all of those things, and the ability to withstand 120 minutes of footy, but also just the confidence of, being in that situation plenty of times. So, I think there's a number of factors, but they've really matured as a unit, and they've got their head in the game, haven't they?
George, was there any worry on your part, going into the last quarter only being 2 goals up? We've seen plenty of times Demon teams of the past sort of wilt under that pressure. I think in the last few years we have seen us, be challenged and rise to it, but we've also seen that go the other way.
Yeah, we've got bitter experience and scarring from previous years, haven't we, around this? But this was something different, and I agree with Binman. I never felt like they were challenging even in that third quarter. They kicked 5 goals. One of them, I think, came from where it bounced off Oliver's head or Petracca's head into Selwood's arms, and he kicked it forward for, I think it was Stanley, to kick a goal. So that was fortuitous. It wasn't as a result of Geelong playing well. The other 2 goals, I think 2 other goals came towards the end of the quarter, came from Smith, simply because he's such an excellent long kick. But again, it was against the run of play. So we had it in control the whole time. It was just, I think I heard also another coach from another side say at some stage, you've got to expect that momentum will swing at some point in the game, even when teams are well and truly behind. There's going to be a period where you get challenged on the scoreboard at least. But this is a different Melbourne that I'm seeing. They didn't. They just took it in their stride and they just kept on doing what they were doing. Everyone's playing their roles. So, yeah, I think we're seeing something very different from what we've seen in the past, which will hopefully help us cure our MFCSS a little bit.
Oh, it'll take more than that. I think a premiership's the only cure for that. Right, Viney, anything you want to add?
No, look, it's great to see that resilience. And I think you might have put up a stat on the board during the week that have we won the most quarters so far this year?
Yeah, so there was a stat that's Sir Swamp thing on Twitter, put up a stat that if points were awarded per quarter, would be firmly on top of the ladder. So we have won the most quarters, I guess.
And am I right in that during 2018 we equalled or broke the record for consecutive number of quarters won, and it was about 20 or 21?
I believe we equalled it. I'm not sure if we won, and I think we lost it in the Bulldogs game. I think at Marvel. I think it might have been the one that Lever got injured in, possibly. Yes.
Yep, very positive signs.
And Andy, that question about whether we did anything tactically, actually, it was interesting because, as I noted, there's been in every game the opposition's come at us, and I think it's a good point, George, that that's what happens in footy, and particularly in 30-minute quarters. You'll get some momentum swings. When Freo and the Saints came at us, in both those games, we took the heat out of the game and played some tempo football. So we did tactically respond, which was really clever, I think. And I think credit's a good one for the Freo game was after half time, and I think the Saints game was perhaps that was sort of the players started doing that during the second quarter. This game, I don't think we did do anything tactically different. We kept that pressure up defensively and manic pressure in the forward half. It was just brilliant to watch. And yeah, I think the goals that they got were, against the grain out the back. The last one that they kicked in the third quarter, Smith kicked. that was actually defensively really good football from the D's, because I don't know if you remember, but they had a chain of handballs and they were looking to tic-tac to bring it down the ground, and Smith moved into inside 50 and he was looking, as you do, as you would expect him to, into the corridor to give off, and I think it was Hunt who forced him wide, who sort of corralled him really cleverly and forced him to jag to the left-hand side, where he ended up having to snag it, around his body in the wet from 40 metres, and all power to him. It was a good kick. He's an excellent player, obviously, good skills. But defensively, it was a really strong bit of work, and that's the hallmark of how we're playing. We're just so hard to score against.
And we just haven't dropped our bundle, we would have done that at least once so far in previous years, and that's what's really encouraging.
Yeah.
I think it was interesting that certainly a couple of times in that game, Geelong tried to implement their rope-a-dope type, chip, 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 and then eventually centre it to Hawkins type of game, which you'll remember last year they did that quite successfully. And in this game they tried to start it up, and we shut them down straight away. And quite frankly, Geelong had no second option. We've talked about not having a plan B. That was certainly the case for them in this game, which means that we've changed the way that we defend, and we've changed the style of attack. It looks very, very much like that Richmond manic pressure, not just in the forward line, but across the whole ground. You don't give them a chance to control the ball, and it'll be interesting. We'll talk about it later with the Hawthorn game, because Hawthorn play the same type of game, just possession. But we didn't allow Geelong any rope at all, and they were the dopes at the end of the day.
Big man, I'll ask you this, because I've seen you've mentioned it on the podcast a few times. I've seen you say it on Demonland, attributing your very, very, very strong opinions of making sure you attribute this, these tactics to Goody. And I don't know, I'm not so sure can be attributed to Goody totally. There's a guy who's come to the club, Adam Uze, who's supposed to be quite a tactical genius, has come from Hawthorn, from good stock under Clarkson. Are you holding fast on your opinion that this is a Goody-led resurgence, new demon resurgence?
Oh, look, I think that's a bit strong in terms of, of course it's not all good one, but I think, what I would push back against is the sort of the narrative that must be Choco Williams or Uze, because Goody's so tactically such a blunderer that, there's no way that it could be him. I think that, it's time raised it last week. George talked about it. Our setup around the stoppages is so much better. We're creating space. We've only got one player going at the football, and it was really noticeable on the weekend. They so often hit that pack at speed because they're coming from a distance. They're running in fast towards the pack to get either the handball or to come in and help out. But what I'd say, Anne, is that the philosophy, he's talked for a long time about having an identifiable brand, and it sort of becomes a bit of a cliche. I haven't been watching any of the sort of footy shows this year because they frustrate me so much, but I watched it this week because I wanted to hear what they were saying about the D's. When I say that, I watched on the couch. They were talking about, the way we're playing at the moment, and they talked about the elements, but what they didn't, that we're defensively minded, that we're pressure, that there's buy-in, defensive running. Everyone's noting now how much more defensive running we're doing. That's really evident when you go to the ground, particularly someone like Oliver. But I think that the tack that it all starts from the back, and that zone that I've talked about a number of times. Again, it was really evident at the ground, sitting high up behind the grounds at their goals, to see the way that they move as a group, as a cell across the ground, to create no option down the ground, which basically forces teams to either attempt to go through it and we mop it up or go around it. We've got the flexibility and pace to stop that switch as well. And everything starts from there. And I think that's tactically a huge change for the team that he's brought it in over the years. He's been trying to do it. He's always been a defensive-minded coach, but I think he's done that zone. Who knows? Everyone's bringing some things to the table. So I think we're tactically quite an interesting team now, and we're not. People talk about us being fast, but it's not really. It's really about those two things: about being better with having clearances that are more damaging, getting a higher, really intense pressure inside 50. Again, I think we had more than 15 tackles inside 50. So we're trapping the ball in there, which is obviously what he'll, always wanted to do. We just couldn't do it. But the defensive setup and that web that they've got back there, that's the big tactical change. And I don't think even Richmond are doing it like that. Sure, but as was noted, we've copied that high intense pressure and, you smash the ball carrier and you force a turnover. That's a given. So the Dogs are doing the same thing. But I think our point of difference is that defensive zone, that web that I've talked about. It's a really noticeable difference. And I think that we're the only ones doing it in quite that way. And because of it, we've become super hard to score against. On that show on the couch, they put up some stats, and one of them was 30.6, I think it was, for scores. What was it, Andy? I think you put it up. 30.6, best percentage ever recorded after round 4 and opposition scores per inside 50. So they're not even scoring a third of the time when they come in to our inside 50, which is remarkable. Everyone's talking about how fast the game is becoming and how open it is. Well, if you look at that, when teams play us, they've got no space in their forward lines to move, and that's all about that defensive zone that they've got going.
Let's talk some individual efforts. You can't really go past Christian Petracca. He hasn't missed a beat from his breakout 2020 season. Was immense once again on Sunday and racked up a ton of possessions and in not the greatest conditions you wouldn't think to play. But he always looks like he just has so much time and space, and he's just impossible to tackle. I just love watching the guy. Great Viney.
He's a next level player. He took that step last year, and it was apparent from the outset that it was going to be a consistent thing rather than just a one-off or occasional thing with track. And he's continued on his merry way this year. The numbers across the board, are outstanding. Really, elite. Name the superlative.
Yeah, you look at the stats on the AFL side. Almost everything is elite for him. This week's had 36 possessions, 15 contested, 10 score involvements, 9 clearances, 657 metres gained. He's kicked the 2 goals, one of which was right on the siren of halftime, I think, which we never do. That's always
the other side.
Usually go the junk time ones against us. So that was a nice thing for us to get. George?
Yeah, there's not enough superlatives for him at the moment. And as Great Viney just said, he took that step last year. And this year, what we're seeing is even another step up, I think. When he has the opportunity, there's never any question about what he's going to do with it. He's got that same attitude as Dustin Martin has, that just leave it to me, boys. I'll look after this. Just stand aside and watch me. Great. He's got utter confidence in his ability. We're going to just see better and better. And we've always wanted, for a long time, we've been looking for a match winner, and I think we've got one, and he will win matches for us this year just off his own efforts.
Big man, have we got a Brownlow medalist in our midst?
It's quite possibly. I mean, you've got to be averaging, history says, 30 possessions a game, disposals a game to win a Brownlow. It's pretty much a given. He's averaging 29.8 this season. So that's huge numbers. And just some of his other stats so far after 4 rounds, he's ranked 3rd in total inside 50s, which is incredible, really. And also 4th in total score involvements. What a combination of statistics, score involvements, fourth, and inside 50s fifth. Then he's eighth in total disposals. I mean, so he's top 10 total disposals in the league, and fifth in total uncontested possession. So he's getting the ball on the outside and being damaging. He is ranked third in clangers per game, so maybe he's not perfect yet. So, but he was incredible on the weekend, and I was saying last week he's now getting so good that you expect him to get 25 possessions and be damaging, but he was incredible. And I love the arrogance after that first goal he kicked to shove. I don't know what the Geelong player's name was, but he went straight to him after he kicked it, and it was a fantastic bit of we're on, boys, and you guys are going to be left in our dust.
Yeah, I think that was also a bit of. I'm not sure if there was anything sort of said between them before that did that, or if that was just part of him trying to fire himself up.
Yeah. That Borgzilla in the chat room says that the fitness of the team is a factor in our ability for that defensive run and spread, and I think that's right. It's really evident, but it's particularly evident with Petracca, isn't it? He's got his fitness to a level where he can spend as many minutes in the middle as required, and then can still go up forward and be incredibly damaging.
I will just mention, if you do want to call the show and add your 2 cents to anything we talk about, 0390 16 3666. That's 0390 16 3666. Clayton Oliver, well, before I go into my notes on him, he's just re-signed until 2023. And as I was discussing with the boys before the show, that brings him to restricted free agency territory. But I guess we're all very happy with that. It's great news that the club can lock that away and take away any of that, will he sign, won't he sign? You don't want to hear during the year they've stalled negotiations till the end of the year. Never like stuff like that, so just put it to bed. So well done, MFC, for locking him in. And you guys can add your 2 cents about that in a minute. We were worried, that he'd get scragged and tagged and roughed up and put off his game like he was last week against the Giants. But whatever tag O'Connor was putting on Clary, it was completely ineffectual. He's racked up 34 possessions, 14 contested, 6 clearances, 10 score involvements, 9 inside 50s. It's just a well-rounded game, and it's hard to sort of put a point of difference between him and Petracca on the day. They were both fantastic. Big man.
Yeah, he was fantastic, wasn't he? And when he was at his best last season, he was getting good meters, and he was really getting great. Did you read out his stats for his meters gained? Just then, any of them?
No, I didn't. So if you've got it in front of you,
grab it. I haven't got it immediately.
I'll get it while you're talking.
He was really damaging in terms of his kicks, and he seems to have improved his kick off one step. He's really driving it a bit flatter and getting good depth. And I thought he was fantastic in this game, and he was so clever. The way he played was so clever. He was really untaggable. He was moving at contests really hard. He got completely poleaxed by track, I think, right on half time, or maybe it was 3/4 time. And he was really sucking wind. He looked actually in a bit of bother, and came out and was fantastic in the last quarter, or whatever the following quarter was. He was just terrific, and geez, he looks like he loves playing footy. I don't know whether it's an affectation he's got. He seems to be smiling even when he's getting tackled, or he's impressive. And just on his re-signing, Andy, I'm super impressed how you organised that to happen just before that to be announced just before the podcast started. That shows.
Would have been good if they could have broke it on here, but I don't think they're going to do that. 474 metres gained, by the way. Season average is 375, and I believe his career average is 288. So
right. Well, that just shows how much more damaging he's been this year.
George?
Yeah, I'll just add a little bit. I was watching the tag from O'Connor because the previous week O'Connor had held Hawthorn's Mitchell to 3 possessions by half time. So he was probably very effective in that game, but against Oliver, had no effect whatsoever. And it was interesting what Oliver was doing to break the tag and yet still have effect. He was standing back away from the centre circle at times, 10 metres away, to give himself space so that O'Connor was trying to hang on to him, but he then had the space to run into to contribute. Scott eventually gave up with the tag, I think, in the third quarter, simply because it was firstly not having any effect, but it was also having a double up effect of leaving Geelong one midfielder down in the middle who was wasting time with Clayton Oliver. So it was a really dramatic effort for Oliver. I think he's as one of the commentators said the other week, he's better get used to the fact that people are going to tag him because he's so good. But because he's so good, he's got to overcome these tags. And I think we saw it this week. He's overcome the tag very demonstrably. So well done to him, and great to see that he signed up. I think, like I said to the boys before the program, good clubs winning games. They don't lose their players, and that's a good sign for the club as a whole.
Great, Viney. You must be wrapped with the signing too.
Yeah, not as wrapped as Oliver. As Binman says, he looks like he's having an absolute ball at the moment, which is good to see. There was a lot of talk about him not being happy at the end of last season, so great to see a big smile on his face. But isn't it amazing that, we've mentioned Petracca and Oliver as, having such great games, and yet our third mid, Jack Viney, was also so good. Which is just fantastic, isn't it? And I know we'll talk about Gawn in a minute too. So the engine room is certainly working.
I had that next actually before Gorney. I said, I've written down here, whilst we're praising some of the mids, it's very important that we make mention of Jack Viney. He's only had 24 possession, 16 contested. He's had 33 pressure acts, 12 absolute bone crunching tackles, and he's got 8 clearances as well. He's not going to get any votes for the game, but you can't underestimate the importance of his role in the team. And when you have the aforementioned Track and Clary show going on, Viney's side show is just as critical to this winning formula that we're putting together. So yeah, Viney is an integral part to this team.
I totally agree, and I was saying that last week, and I think one of the interesting things that I didn't see I went to the game and I watched the replay, but didn't catch this, and I saw on the couch they showed Petracca being interviewed after the game, directly after the Geelong win, and he was talking about just how switched on and together the team is, and how connected, and maturity. I think he mentioned maturity as well. And I read on Demonland just before we started that on the back of the sign, he was on 360 tonight, and he was saying that sort of similar things, that they're all sort of switched on and they're all really connected, was the word that gets thrown up a fair bit. And with Viney, I think because he's quite myopic. He's a footballer's footballer, and he's probably not someone who's, really sugarcoats things. And potentially, I reckon, he might be the sort of fella that rubs people up the wrong way. But when things are going well and a football team's travelling together, he's exactly the sort of player that you need, and someone he's just crazy brave, isn't he? I mean, he's just phenomenal, his attack on the footy.
Let's move on to Maxi, another masterclass in the ruck, 41 hitouts, 10 to advantage, 23 disposals, 6 marks. I thought he actually took more than that. I was surprised when I saw he only had 6, and kicked that absolute monster goal from, mind you, inside the square.
Darren Bennett territory, that.
That is, and we desperately needed it. That was sort of against the flow of play. They'd kicked a couple of goals. Just an amazing performance from the captain once again. Love the guy, George.
Yeah, we all love Max, and this was probably one of the best games that I've ever seen him play. Despite the stats, we've learnt about hitouts not being as important in the overall game plan, but Max also had 7 clearances in this game. For a guy who's 208 centimetres, that was a monumental effort. So, but I think what we're seeing is the better side of Max now as a result of a bloke called Luke Jackson providing the backup and not just in the ruck component of it, but around the ground. So both Max can go back, Max can go forward, and so can Luke Jackson. And I think that was probably the big factor that was missing for us last year and certainly the year before. But I think this is going to be a really fearsome combination. We know how good Max has been when operating on his own, but when he's got a backup killer like Jackson operating as well, and we're yet to see the best of Jackson, this is going to be a really exciting ride for all of us.
Yeah, it really is, and I like. Usually, they say you should develop these tools in the twos, but I think with Jackson, it's a different story. I'm liking the on-the-job training that he's getting in the seniors. Um, uh, Very happy with what he's doing. Not getting a ton of possessions, but I just love every possession that he gets, and some of those handballs, and he's really integral to some of the chains that we're having. And he is able to. I think he had 4 or 5 clearances as well. He's able to rove his own taps, which you see Nick Nack do a lot. Really loving what I'm seeing at the moment, and we're going to see more of it. B-Man?
Gordon, we've talked about it all season so far. It's remarkable. He's the best ruckman I've ever seen now. I mean, any talk about Grundy being anywhere near him in ability is incredible. I think the use of Jackson's critical for how they use Gawn, because as we talked about last week, we saw it this week. It gives us so much tactical flexibility in how they use him. They could bring him back when May went off, bring him forward as needed. And it was a day for the true believers in the clearances, Andy. We're up 11 on clearances, and that was a big part of his work. And I was just in the stats that matter on the Melbourne website. It's a really some good stats on it often. Just looking at the metres gained from stoppages, we had 500 plus more metres from stoppages than them, and 16 to 8 first possessions at centre bounces. That's just incredible, and a lot of that's Max, but also Jackson. He is very effective. He's not clanking his marks. I mean, it was a wet day, so I won't knock him too much. But he's only in his 10th game of footy, AFL footy. He is just a total out and out star. So the combination of those two, you can see why Taylor got him. Just how we can now use Max in the way they already have. So that's another tactical thing. I don't know, Andy, maybe it's Choco Williams, maybe it's Uze, but possibly it's Goodwin. They're using him super cleverly. And one of the other stats that jumped out from me related to Max is he got 23 disposals. That's a lot for a big fella on a wet day. And we had 10% more time in our forward half than them. That's all about that territory game, and he's a huge part of that territory game. So, they can now kick from the back half, 40, 50 metres to Max, to Jackson, to T-Mac, who was pushing up in the ground. That's the model. Get it long, get it to one of those boys, and if they don't mark it, someone's, Langdon or Brayshaw or Hunt is running next to the pack to move it forward. So, he's just fantastic, and he's great for the footy club, isn't he?
I just you mentioned the 23 possessions on a wet day. When he kicked that goal, if you have a watch on our homepage of Teamland, we've got that goal on replay
again.
Yes, that was such a good goal. It had to go. But just we had a couple of where we were kicking off the ground, once forward, once back, and Max just picks it up one-handed almost, and just runs through traffic and kicks a beautiful kick for a big guy as well. It was straight as an arrow. Beautiful kick. So,
and just on that goal, I was sitting directly above it, so in the southern stand on the second level, and Jackson held off the defender fantastically, and I don't know, that was actually poor in the end. The defender misread it. He should have gone back to market. But Jackson really held his space in front of him super hard and deserves part of the credit for that goal to allow get over the back, because the defender was completely committed to try and grappling with Jackson and push him forward under the ball when it just went over the top of both of them.
Let's talk defence. Jake Lever, was an absolute star in defence on Sunday, particularly so when Stephen May went down in the second quarter and was ruled out for the rest of the match. Jake really stepped up as that leader in defence, and we're very lucky. We've got two great natural leaders down back in May and Lever, and it's absolutely invaluable, because if you just have a Stephen May as your general and he goes down early in the match, you don't have anyone else. But amazingly, we've got another leader that's ready to go. Watching the replay when I got home, there was one particular incident. I think it was late in the second quarter, and Gus had given away a free that, frankly, it was downfield. I don't think the free was actually there. And I'm not sure what was happening back where the initial free was called, but Jake Lever just left the mark. There was another player there, so he wasn't leaving it open. And with a cool head, he came and calmed everyone down. Obviously, he didn't want to give away free kicks or be lippy at the umpires. And Geelong got the easy goal, but then Jake sort of marshalled all the troops to him just to get everyone back on track. And now I'm not down on the field, so I can't say what was said or what impact it had, but I just liked what I saw in him. He seems like he's such a great leader. And just back to his statistics on the day, 10 1-percenters, and one of them, if you saw the vision, where he was absolute, I think it was almost 3-1, and they had a stream of players coming and he just attacked the ball and got it. Fantastic. 11 intercepts, 9 spoils, 3 intercept marks, 5 rebounds out of defensive 50, 5 contested defensive one-on-ones, and he's been in 4 score involvements. So just a tremendous game from him, and I think he's had a fantastic season thus far. And part of that's been because him and May have been playing together, so it'll be interesting, and we'll talk about it soon, what the backline's going to look like with Lever out for a little bit. But he's been fantastic, George.
Yeah, we've been crying out for years at this club with looking for leadership, and the arrival of Stephen May, I think, provided it down the back. But also we've heard how, on the various releases, how good Lever is as a leader. I think importantly, as you've just highlighted, this is the game that we saw the leadership of Lever in action. He was rallying the troops. It was obvious from the stands that he knew what he had to do, because May was no longer there, and he just took over that generalship of the back line and just directed people left and right. And then to top it all off, as you said, his individual efforts were just remarkable, given that we'd just lost our main defender. So it was just a superb game from him. He also brought Salem and Tomlinson into the game, so it was just a fantastic effort from that whole backline team. They just became a team. They lost their figurehead, but that didn't make any difference to them. It was great to watch.
Big man, how did you see Tomlinson go? Obviously had to take over from Stephen May, who had done a good job thus far on Hawkins, and so how'd you see Tomlinson go? We lost Big man there.
He's muted again.
He's muted. All right, maybe he's got something on. Great Viney.
All good. Muted.
Great Viney can go next.
Travie 14 was said in the chat room that Tomlinson was a big factor in actually allowing Lever to be as influential as he was. And I reckon that's a really good point, because he manned up Hawkins fantastically. And I think I read on Demonland that someone said that he was on Hawkins for much of the game. And I'm sure May was on him for a little bit, though. He certainly was when he got injured. But I heard him interviewed on, I think it was one of the radio stations, SEN.
RSN maybe.
I think it was SEN on Sam Edmund was talking to him, and he said that he worked super hard over the pre-season on his defensive work, and that he had done a bit. He made the point that he'd done a fair bit of that previously. I was pretty critical of him as defender last year, but he's a good footballer, so time to learn. If that's what he wanted to do, and he was fantastic, I thought, and it was really he really shut down Hawkins, and I was right above him when Hawkins kicked that goal, and the expression on his face, when sort of Hawkins got that boot to it and wrestled him out of it, he was spewing on it, and but I thought he was fantastic. He was great and really clever. Really, he was also a good leader, very vocal, pointing. And Tomlinson made the point that between him and Lever, that they helped. Gus was really important when he came back down there, and he played off the halfback flank, and that Tomlinson was saying Lever was just telling him to stand in the hole in front of Hawkins, and you could tell that he did that really well. Gus, I thought he played fantastic as well in terms of playing that team role and sacrificing his game to go down back. So. Short answer, yeah, Tomo was great.
Great, Viney. Want to add anything on any of our backmen?
No, back up all that. So, yep, all good.
Well, perhaps you can help me out with this one, because we've got Stephen May. Looks like he's going to be out for an extended period of time. They've said 2 to 4 weeks, but I guess it all depends on how that eye, the swelling around the eye, sort of heals. Hopefully it's only 4 weeks, but we've got to cover his loss. How do we cover this loss?
If he makes the miraculous recovery, by the way, I'd like to see the headline in the paper, May B, C, D. If he's on the brink of selection, which would be good. But look, it's funny to say that he's going to be hard to cover, given that we had no trouble covering from on the weekend. But look, the strongest indication that we've got from the coach is that Harry Petty will come in and take over that key defensive role. So pretty much like for like. Some people on the board have been getting creative and thinking about throwing Tommy Mack down back again. I can't see that happening, and I think the coach pretty much ruled it out in the post-match presser too. So
pretty quickly too.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. So look, it looks pretty straightforward. Whether that mix changes over the next 4 weeks, Hibbert, of course, is probably in contention, and his name is in the mix. So whether it changes depending on our opposition and how many talls they've got, and how we match up against that, I guess we'll see.
Well, big man, I'll ask you. So, this week I don't think it's an issue. I'd like Petty to come in this week just to be able to play with the guys and get a feel of the team and the players, and playing with Lever and Tomlinson and Salem and all the other backmen. So I'd like him to come in, particularly because the next week, and we like to take things 1 week at a time, but looking in 2 weeks' time, we've got Richmond, who have got Lynch and Rewalt. So you want to have the flexibility of allowing Lever to play sort of that intercept third man up. So how do you see our backline, particularly against a Richmond, who takes who, and or does it revolve around like we've seemed to do?
I've gone from listening to no media about the D's to suddenly becoming super keen on listening to anything I can either watch or get podcasts on. And I happen to be listening to the radio, searching around for Melbourne content, and listen to McCartney being interviewed. And he's now coaching up at Ballarat, and he does a weekly spot on SEN on the Monday, and reflecting on the games. And he was talking about the D's. It was really actually quite an interesting insight. He talked about how strong our defensive unit is, and he was asked that question, and he said that Petty's a great young fella. He's going to be a star. He'll come in for May, and that with a defensive unit that's got really good synergy and working well, when you have just one player going out, you can just replace them. It's when you have more than that one change that it can be a bit risky. But he said when the system's really strong, as it is at the Demons at the moment, one out's not normally an issue. Even a key player like May, assuming you've got someone who's can do the job, and he was pretty confident Petty can do the job. And by all accounts, he's been playing all right in the VFL practice game. So, the logical thing would be for him to come in and basically play the full back. And I think they've lost, is it Lewis?
Mitch Lewis got a week suspension.
Yes,
Yeah, helps that situation, but I still think you bring him in because I'd like to.
Exactly. But 100% Petty comes in, but that'd be the only change I'd be making, particularly to the back line.
Yeah, and you're right, Andy. It's the perfect week to bring Petty in that case because Gunston isn't playing. He's out for a couple more weeks, so here's a chance for Petty to get his feet in the back line and get to understand what's going on before they have to worry about Rewalt and Lynch the following week. So I think he's a certainty to go into the side this week.
What about Hibberd? All reports played. Was the best player out at Casey. Played a very consistent game across all 4 quarters. Used the ball well on a wet, terrible conditions out of Casey. And was it out of Casey? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, would you bring him in, or no? We might not need that extra defender.
I think, unfortunately, I watched Jeddah a couple of times in this game. He's just running up and down in the one spot at the moment. He's okay when the ball comes in high and he can body the opposition small, but as soon as the ball or he has to run, he's miles behind. At one stage, I recall seeing him at least 5 meters behind his individual opponent. And if you've got one coach in the whole of the AFL who will exploit that with other young, quick smalls, it's Alistair Clarkson. He will put someone on him or isolate someone on him who will just run him away. I see Moore for Hawthorn kick 3 goals this week. He's only 176 centimetres tall, so that would be the likely target, just someone who, and also they drop Wingard in there as well. Clarkson will just isolate him. He knows the weakness in the back line, and sad to say, it's Neville at the moment.
Yeah, I don't agree, George. I reckon, the Geelong team have got a flotilla of mediums, and it's where we've historically struggled in the last few years, and he's been really strong in that role this year, and I thought he played super. And take your point fully about his lack of pace, but a lockdown one-on-one player in a small, he'll go to Wingard, I reckon. I can't see him being dropped, certainly not for Hibberd. I think Lockhart's the replacement eventually, but Hibberd's competing for a spot with Hunt and Rivers, in my view, because he's not good one-on-one. He's not terrific one. He's okay, but he's not as good one-on-one as Neville is. His go is running off the halfback flank and metres gained, and we've got Rivers and Hunt playing that role. So, yeah, I can't see them making a change there, to be honest.
Yeah, we can just briefly talk about Hunt and Rivers as well. I think both of them are doing their jobs. Hunt's been very impressive the last couple of weeks, and I can't see him losing his spot.
Hard to see any of them losing their spot at the moment. It's there'd be great reluctance on Goodwin and the FD's part to change the side at all. They've got the one force change with May, but it's hard to see too many others being on the chopping block.
Especially when you throw Salem in there as well.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. Look, Salem, Langdon. Look, we don't we don't always have time to talk about every single player, but it's hard to go. Those 2 players. I know we had them down on our notes. Langdon's just been fantastic. Salem is safe as houses with the ball in his hand. Often he gets overlooked. We talk about Petracca, we talk about Oliver. and Salem just gets overlooked week in, week out, but always contributing. And
It's a bit like the Little League at the minute, isn't it, where everyone was the best. Everyone gets a run in the paper, the entire team. It's a team effort.
team effort, that's what I was thinking of, the wording they used. Yeah.
You're bringing back bad memories for me there, Grapevine, and my participation awards.
Everyone gets a trophy day. Well, let's talk about the forward line, because I don't know, we might have to make a change there as well. And before we talk about the shape of the forward line to come, based on the return of Ben Brown and Wiedemann to Casey, I'd just like to say it's great to see the accurate Bailey Fritsch return to the team on the back of 3 straight last week. He's kicked 4 goals, 1 this week. He was fantastic. I love seeing this Bailey Fritsch. This is the Bailey Fritsch that I remember, that came into the team, and what did we get? We got him from the pick we got from Jack Watts, and he's really, I think we've come out the winners on that trade. However, accuracy once again, or lack thereof, could have proved costly. I thought we were well in control of the game, could have put it away at the team early, snuffed out any chance of them having a sniff, which you can't give a team like Geelong, as we saw, even though we've discussed that. And we could have banked more percentage. I'm back on that. It's a top 4 world problem.
Yeah,
But we've had.
That's a very rare problem for us to have.
I know.
yeah, and
That's why
players like
Yeah.
Cozzy need to go back and work on his shots from 45 metres out on the boundary line, slider in the wet. It's not good enough to be hitting the post from out there. So,
Well, look, we've had Spargo 3 behinds, Pickett 2, Viney 2 behinds, Track and Melksham both should have kicked their set shots. I mean, look, it was windy and I'm getting greedy. We've kicked 50 goals 49 this year to 39 goals 25. So other teams have been a lot more accurate than we are. But when you're kicking more goals in total, I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, I'd like to bank some percentage, and perhaps we'll have a chance this week.
But, I mean,
But
it definitely kept them in it, didn't it? Because the scoreboard, it was a classic example of the scoreboard not reflecting our dominance. I mean, we really dominated that game, in not just physically we dominated it, but we right from the get-go we looked like a team that was going to win that game of footy. Definitely kept them in it, but it was really swirling, that wind. That was it was significant. So they did amazingly to be so accurate, I thought. But it was, to be fair, it was incredibly windy. The first kick that Viney had at goal, I don't think he did. He barely made the distance from about 30 metres. And then the goal that Jones kicked, again, I was right behind that kick, and it seemed to stop. It was like watching some slow motion film. It was sort of creeping towards the goal, and it was pretty difficult conditions. I know this week we haven't got too many complaints about the umpiring, and on our scoring we had 2. The 50 metres that Fritsch got after being shoved into the fence, he should have got one last week, I thought. And that really helped. He wasn't going to miss that one. And then the free kick that we got for the deliberate, and then Langdon, of all players, bending it around. So and Fritsch kicking that goal from that mark. So they were 2 really good kicks when needed in that last quarter. So credit where it's due.
Yeah, you said we don't have much to complain about the umpiring. My voice is testament to a lot of complaints, because once again, it's the free kicks you don't get.
Yeah, that's true.
I thought we were hard done by. We should have won the free kick count by more.
We did win the free kick count though, so
Yes, but by more.
Greedy, just greedy.
Absolutely greedy. Well, when you start winning, you get greedy. I wonder what Hawthorn fans must be like, and Geelong fans. Since T Mac is an integral part of any discussion of the makeup of our forward line going forward, I think it's important to note whilst he didn't trouble the scoreboard on the day, but he did have 21 possessions. He took 9 marks, and he often contested, got the ball to the ground for Crummers to score from. having said that, he's only kicked 4 goals this year, and he's behind Fritsch on 10, Pickett on 8, and Track on 5. With Ben Brown playing a half in the Rezzies. Who was it that posted on Mad as Hell was the first guy to put up a thing. He said that he reckons Ben Brown will play this week. He could have had 3 goals in the first term. One hit the post and another one was online but fell short. He misread the breeze. Took some very good marks, got his hands on a lot of contests, didn't get as much of it in the second term, though Casey barely got it forward of centre in that term. Most encouraging performance.
Goody basically ruled it out, and Wiedemann.
Did he?
He said 3-4 weeks away.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Still?
Yeah. He, in the context about Tom, that question about Tom McDonald, I think it was straight afterwards. We were pretty much quick to say, no, they've got 2-3 more weeks, and we're going to make sure they're cherry ripe before they come back in.
Well, I think Wiedemann, by all reports, didn't touch the ball at all, so I can see that. But I don't know. Do you bring Ben Brown in this week?
Well,
I mean, I've got he said no, but
he said not.
man, you're the coach.
I know. I thought Tom McDonald was fantastic, and it was interesting. There was a bit of debate on Demerland about how well he played or otherwise. I thought he was terrific, and I was a bit critical of his body language last week, and it can be a bit iffy at times. Not this week. There were a few times where he didn't get frees where he should have. He didn't. He stayed in the contest. No poor body language. I thought he was awesome, and he was really important. That player, no worries him not getting goals because most of his possessions are up the ground and running hard up and taking those contested long balls down the line.
And those numbers are great. If your centre half forward or full forward is coming back with those numbers every week, you'd be pretty happy. And he might not have kicked too many goals this year, but the forward line has functioned well over the 4 weeks, and it functioned well again despite horrendous conditions on the weekend. And he's playing his role in making that happen.
Yeah. And I think George pointed out a few weeks ago that they're stretching that forward line. They're getting it open. So even Fritsch's, I think his third goal where he got a handball from Cozzy, he had a fair bit of space to move in. And part of that is that sort of, your T-Max going up the ground and creating space. And so is Jackson. And, if you compare that to, they don't have any space in their forward line. But of course we've got our manic pressure. I think that's the other thing about our forward line. We're just going bananas in there for inside tackles, inside 50 tackles.
I think what we're seeing is a different forward structure as well. T-Mac, I can't recall, actually spent a lot of time inside the forward 50. He was that link man up the field that we saw him perform so well in 2018 when Hogan was the main go-to man in the forward line. But I think it's also slightly different from what we saw in 2018 in that we are stretching the opposition defenders really wide. That creates the space for the people like Fritsch to be able to lead into. And the other thing that's happening is, of course, we're dropping Gawn and Jackson back in there as targets. You don't need T-Mac in there competing against them if they're rotating in there on a regular basis. So we've got a different setup than what people perhaps expect. T-Mac might be on the team sheets as a full forward, but he's not playing full forward in any way, shape or form.
Exactly.
And if you have a look at his stats on the AFL Stats Pro, he's rated elite in quite a few categories. Marks, obviously, kicks, handballs, inside 50s. Very encouraging. So he's not troubling the scoreboard, but he's definitely contributing to the team.
And can I ask what you fellas thought about Melksham's game as a forward?
Go ahead, George.
Stunned silence for very good reason. It was Melksham of exactly last year and the year, certainly last year. I was watching him in particular a couple of times. It was the same old trotting out the back, following your man up. I think it was statistically terrible. He had 2 tackles for the game. He played, 75% of the game time. Sparrow, who came on when May went off the field, only got 39% game time, so he's played half the game time of what Melcham had, yet Sparrow managed 5 tackles, 9 touches, 3 clearances and 195 metres gained. Melcham had 2 tackles, 11 touches and 142 metres gained. So, in double the time, he just doesn't want to put in at the moment. I don't know why. He should know that to keep a spot in this team, you're going to have to put in and perform every week. And he hit the goal that he got. While it's nice to get the goal, it was exactly the same as what he's been doing in the past, out the back looking for the cheap stuff. That's not the way that you want to be playing today. He'll find himself very quickly playing at Casey again if he puts in a similar sort of performance.
Also, that goal could have been kicked by about 3 other players. Kept handballing it around. So
very underwhelming.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because I had a pretty strong reaction to how he played last year, and so I was. It's hard to watch him with that sort of confirmation bias, and I think he'll get picked again this week. You don't bring someone in for 1 week, but he does this thing which I can't stand, which he corrals instead of tackles, and he did it down on the forward flank for them, on their forward flank underneath the members stand, and they cleared it. They got an inside 50, and it just drives me nuts. That sort of, there's a place for it, but it just sometimes he seems to do complex things when the basic is what's required. Like Viney would have just gone straight at the player and taken the body, and he just seems to sometimes try and be too clever by half, and I don't know whether that's a new thing, or, he's always done it, but he was a different player in that respect in 2018. I thought he was certainly more physical.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we do there, because he's sort of a bit of a favourite, gets picked, and I can't see who comes in for him.
We've got Sparrow, who came in this week, who performed pretty well. Chandler has previously been sitting on the emergency lines as well. So, like I said, there's people sitting there waiting for the opportunity.
I wrote on Demonland that I expected that he'd probably play some minutes in the midfield, and he did. So I could see them doing that again, because if he can get the ball forward of the centre from those centre clearances, specifically, in the centre stoppages, he can be damaging kick with that inside 50. It's just that he didn't get any kicks inside 50 from memory.
They started him in the middle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And I often think they do that to get him into the game, but
I think it's more of a tactic. But let's see how he goes this week. And
well, let's hope he does what he did when we played them in the final that time. Look, if you want to go jump on Demonland, we've got quite a good write up of the players from the Casey game. I won't go through all of them. So we've got Mad as Hell, Baghdad Bob's report, Picket Fence's report, and Roy Boy's report. They've done a pretty good summary of all the players. So if you want to jump on Demonland, you can find that there.
How amazing is that about it within 2 hours of the end of that game, there were 3 or 4 very detailed player-by-player summaries for fans to pore over. Absolutely love the website for that.
Thank God for Demonland, because the comms from the MFC leave something to be desired. Just before we move off the D's game, Travie14 in the chat room notes that the role of Jones, we don't talk about him much. I thought he was fantastic, and Travie notes that he's playing really selfless footy, and he's a classic utility player, isn't he? The way he gets used off the half-back flank, he's bobs up on the wing, pushes forward, kicked an important goal. That was a really timely goal that he kicked.
Yeah.
And as Travie14 points out, all things being equal, he'll be playing his 300th at the Anzac Eve game.
Yeah, I'm happy. Look, I read not just on Demonland, but a lot of on sort of Facebook, and there's a lot of people every week are like, get rid of Jones. I think he's doing he's playing a role, and he's doing it very well. He adds that experience to the team, and I think we've found a new role for him. And as long as he's still doing it and playing his role, I'm happy for him to be in the team. I don't think he's detracting from anyone or taking a position from anyone at the moment. I don't think they're just playing him until he gets to that 300.
And it shows the importance of having that sort of player who can do exactly as multiple roles. He can give players a chop out. Some of those the statistics on time on ground is really interesting. You've got a number of players 100%. Tomlinson, Lever, Langdon up around 100% game time, even Track and Oliver high. And then you've got a bunch around the 50 to 60%. Well, if you're going to do that, you need your players like Jones who can come on and give players a chop out, who've got the ability to play in unusual positions, or the wing, the halfback. And he's, as you say, Andy, he's doing a job and doing it week in, week out. And he must be one of the most durable footballers Melbourne had. He doesn't seem to be injured very often.
That's the critical thing, isn't it? That from a coach's perspective, if you've got a player who can fit into multiple positions, it makes the coach's position very, very easy in that sense. You can't afford to. Let's say we lose a midfielder or two. Where do you find the next one? Well, you've got a Nathan Jones sitting ready to go straight in there as needed. And when we were talking about Melcham, who would otherwise come in? Well, we've got the Sparrow and you've got a Chandler, but just as equally, they're not pushing Jones out as well. All praise to him. And he will get to his 300 no matter what. And that's great for the club as well. We need to change a lot of things that just haven't been happening for the last 10 years, and that's one of them. Getting some records up on the wall. It's just enthuses the supporters.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but if we do win this week, we're going into that game undefeated. We've got Oliver just re-signing, and Jones playing his 300. That suddenly becomes a big game of footy for the Melbourne Footy Club.
And obviously we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it looks like, from what I've been seeing, it could be back to 100% at the footy.
I want to see that, because I don't want to deal with Tika anymore.
Well, I have said it I've said it on this podcast, and I've said it on Demonland. I still think at least initially, they're going to still make us go through this Ticketek for tickets even at 100%. I think they want a bit of control. They want to know how many people are going to the games. They want to know for catering. Someone mentioned perhaps for, so they can close off the top level if they need to, for, so that they can save on cleaning costs. I think between the venues and the AFL, they want to keep a bit of control over it. And that's not, I don't think, a political thing. I think they're just liking that at the moment. So I don't know.
I'd just like to be able to buy a ticket with my credit card, which they refused this week.
Why is that?
I have got no idea. I could buy a ticket at the solitary outlet they've got in the city with the same credit card, but I couldn't online.
Well,
I reckon blame the umpires for that one.
Yeah.
There's no umpire to complain to, though. That's the trouble.
All right, let's move on. Unless anyone's got something else on any other players you want to bring up.
Well, just Gus. I talked about him briefly, but he's actually, as the police fly past my place, Gus is being really flexible in the way he's being used, and similar to Jones, is that they've, he's primarily been a winger, but his role to go down back and to sort of play that role. And I think, that there's been no talk this year on Demonland or elsewhere that I've heard about, well, the only spot he can play is in the midfield. And I think that was a bit of a knock on him, that I had a knock on him for, you play where you get a game, I reckon, at this level. And he seems to have taken that approach. And, I think he's an important player. His disposal is a bit iffy, but he's no Robertson Caruso there in our team. But he makes good decisions often. And he's a sort of a glue player, I reckon. He's smart, and I think he's well liked at the club. And I've really enjoyed the way he's going about his footy this year.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move on. There was a disappointing. D's had another game on the weekend that was quite disappointing. The AFLW, where they were bundled out of the preliminary final. And I thought we were doing all right in the middle, but every time we kicked it forward, there was just a brick wall, and it just kept rebounding straight out. We just couldn't get anything going in terms of scoring. We'd just bomb it in, it'd get kicked right back out, and then eventually in the third quarter, the floodgates opened, and Adelaide put on a few goals, and it was just sort of an insurmountable mountain to climb to get that back, particularly playing interstate. And George, you must be devastated.
Yeah, it was very disappointing because the girls have played so well this year and really deserved to be up there, but they ran into Adelaide, which premiers 2 years ago, and unfortunately the Adelaide that they ran into had Erin Phillips playing back again at her very best.
Fantastic, wasn't she?
Yeah, the 2 goals that she created on her own effectively was the difference at the end of the game. It was almost like a rerun of what we've been hearing about the men's side in the last couple of years. Even a bit of it this year is, in order to win matches, you've got to kick goals, and when we only kicked 1 goal in the final quarter, we were never going to win it. Sadly, Tarrant, I think it was in the first quarter, missed kicking from 2 metres out. If that had gone in, if she kicked that goal, I think it would have changed the whole focus of the way the team was playing. You can't play 3/4 of a game and not get a major on the board. It just is depressing to the players. Takes away the enthusiasm. Get a goal in early on in the first, and they're up and running, and they high-fiving each other and getting the enthusiasm, but it was never there right from the start. And let's face it, they'd won 5 games, I think it was, in a row against 3 of the other top 4 sides. It was a pretty good effort and pretty hard. They didn't get the easy run into the finals that others managed to get. So well done to them. I think for next season, what we desperately need is someone up forward, a full forward target. Cunningham, I think they learnt certainly early on in this season that she just hasn't got the strength to be able to hold that position down to make any serious impact in the game. So, we'd be looking for, I think, a decent forward target. Bannon might come good. It's only her first season, and she's still only 19, I think. But all credit to the girls. Well done. You did very well. You just ran into, as Andy described it, a brick wall on a good day for them. It's not surprising that the results finished up that way. In any case, it would have been nice the other way, but that's the way it falls.
Mm.
It's interesting. The women's club just posted to Instagram not too long ago a clip of Daisy talking to the girls after the game, and I nearly had tears running down my face because they were absolutely shattered. Daisy was crying, or the whole, fighting back tears, voice cracking up. Many of the players were in tears, and they looked genuinely shattered. And I think it came from, I think they had a genuine belief that they could go all the way this year, and to fall as they did on the weekend, and it was quite emphatic in the end. I think that would have been a bit of a shock to the system, and I felt gutted for them to see that footage, because they really looked like they felt like they had a shot at it.
Yeah, it reminded me a bit of that Collingwood game, but I had a flashback. It reminded me for all the world of the preliminary final from 2018. From 10 minutes in, I just had that feeling. There's no way we're going to win this game of footy. Actually, if we'd kicked it straight in the end, we had a chance to at least get close. I think it was it? What was the margin in the end? 18?
18.
18, yeah. And we had some very gettable goals in that last quarter that we should have kicked. Scott missed a couple and took a couple of amazing marks. But even if we got close, it would have been a bit of steel because they were way better. And as Andy said, we just couldn't get it past half. But we had, for whatever the reason was, all of our best players were down. Cunningham was pretty ineffectual. Zanka had probably a worst game of the season, just about. Paxman played well, I thought, but didn't really have any meaningful possessions. Watching it was just one of those awful games where you just felt watching it that from early on it looked like they were going to win, and you didn't get the feeling that we were going to be able to turn it around in large part because I guess we weren't on, but they were so on. And when it's so physical like that in the women's game, it's I guess that's what happens in finals footy at any, it goes up a notch with pressure. But, geez, they were incredibly ferocious. We had no time and space at all. We couldn't get any of those linking handballs up. That's been such a hallmark of our game. We've been so good at transition this year, and they just didn't allow us that. And we were making mistakes that we hadn't been making. And, it was, for me, the game was summed up by that god-awful collision between, was it McNamara? And I don't
McNamara and Randall, I think.
That was a sickening clash, and it was sort of, I know both of them were injured and both went out. But it was, it was not a great watch.
That Randall's one of their best players, and she's now going to miss the grand final. And I know it's probably not a consideration for the AFLW, but they've been talking about it for the men's game. We have the bye pre-finals, and they're discussing whether they move that to a bye, pre-grand final. What are your thoughts on that, just in general? And then I also saw a list today of all the amount of players that have gone down with concussion in the men's. It's quite a long list, and May's on it twice. George?
Yeah, I think as a preference, I'd prefer to see the bye before the grand final, simply because we want to see the two best sides with the best players available on the field. The concussion side of things has to be taken seriously. So when they've got a 12-day rule in place, have the bye in there just to make sure that both teams have the best opportunity to get their players in there. I think it's more important for the grand final rather than worrying about whether players are being rested in round 22, round 23. It may not be a good look, but we really don't need to have the rest given to people who are going to be in elimination finals rather than a grand final. So that's only a preference at the moment.
Doesn't it create a problem for a side that finishes, that wins the second semi and then has a week off anyway? Aren't you then potentially the better sides are only playing 2 games over 4 weeks? 3 games.
Yeah.
It does. This list, players who have suffered concussions this season: May times 2, McIntosh, Stanley, Mills, Rockcliffe, Kelly, Webster, King, Main, Murphy, Fife, Walker, Schultz, Cunningham, Taylor, Zerha, Langdon, Hannon, Cunningham, and Lemons. That's 20 players. Well, that's May twice, so 19 players with concussion in 4 weeks. Or I guess they're including the pre-season as well. It's quite a list.
I saw that title on Demonland, and I thought, I'm not even going to open that thread because talk about getting ahead of yourself. I was thinking, we're already.
No. I will just say I wasn't bringing that up. That was occasionally we can discuss general things in the AFL.
Yeah.
I wasn't me of all people, Mr. Pessimism.
Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, you can guarantee with our MFCSS that if we got to the grand final, there wouldn't be a week's bye, and we'd lose 3 players to concussion in the preliminary final.
So I hadn't given it any thought because I didn't open that thread, didn't know what it was about. But I agree with. I'm not a fan of that break. I know that people like it. week before because of the sort of spanner it throws in the works and the potential I mean, you should get some advantages if you've got through fit to the end of the season. And I think, the one before creates a real dilemma in terms of the sort of disadvantage and advantage. I mean, the other thing too, what about the team that, that means everyone gets a rest. And one of the benefits of winning the prelim and coming through from one thingo is that you've only played the games and you've got that rest. That's an advantage that you well earned to finish up the top of the ladder. And that's completely mitigated if everyone gets a week's break. But having said that, I mean, a problem for them is, and I was thinking about this on the weekend when May went down, if with a 12-day automatic, if you concuss someone the week before a big game and you happen to be playing them in 2 weeks or in in the lead up, or does it open up the questions of? I mean, I guess that could always happen, someone deliberately injuring someone, but concussion's a bit different. You just give them a clobber, if that's an automatic 12-day.
Yeah. No, look, I don't know if people are going. You open yourself up to missing a player.
Yeah.
Out of with suspension. So unless you just bring someone in just to
I've been watching
take
too much
someone out.
conspiracy TV shows.
I think so. Before we go into just the preview of the Hawthorn game, there was another big news coming out of the Demon camp this week with the stepping down of our president, Glen Bartlett, and handing over the reins to it's Kate Roffey. Is Roffey her surname?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Have I got that right? Yes. So, what did we think of that, Great Viney? Sort of came as a bit of a shock.
It was a bit of a shock coming off the back of the elections recently. So, and there was no hint that it was coming. I saw Glenn said that he's cooked and very tired, and it's time to move on. I agree. It's time for fresh eyes and a fresh face. I don't know a lot about Kate, but apparently she's got a very good track record of delivering major projects. I think she was involved at the tennis centre down there in delivering one of those courts. So that's the kind of expertise that we need. I'm sure she's got more strings to her bow than that. And as I say, I don't know too much about her, but I'm looking forward to her presidency. And great to have the first female president in the history of our storied club. And I'm not surprised that the media took that sort of gender angle to it, given our traditional association as being establishment and probably a bit of a boys' club. So if she can shake that up along the way too, then good luck to her.
George, your thoughts on?
Yeah,
Kate?
it was interesting and unexpected. Glenn, I think was it at the members' night? He looked horrible, or was it the AGM? I can't remember which one. He really looked like he'd been put through the ringer. There's something going on in the background there, but it just might be that for whatever reason he just can't spend the time that's required. And while it's a voluntary role, it does take up a lot of people's lives and it's very emotional. So if he's decided it's time to go on, then it's a good time to go on, because you don't want a walking dead president for the next 8 months as the season progresses. So it's a good time to make that change if that's the way he's feeling. So very, very pleased that we've got a lady leading the club now. It's becoming something that the AFL as a whole and the clubs as a whole have needed for a long time. I looked through the Richmond board this week. I think they've got 4 women on their board, for example. It's about time this change has come in. Women are 50% of the population, and certainly a sizable amount of the football crowd every week are the same wives and and girlfriends that we all hang around with, and they're following the football just like we are. So great to see, and I hope Kate can finally get this home training base problem that we've had for the last 30 plus years sorted out. That will be the real feather in her cap if she can pull that one off. I've been to too many AGMs and had these promises coming from presidents after presidents, including Glen, to say that we're going to do something about it before the end of my term. Well, his term's now finished, and it's still not finished. So, Kate, we're depending on you.
It's interesting, just in the actually in the Clayton Oliver thread, Ivor Warren-Smith has speculated in relation to somebody else's comment about talking about Gary Pert, and he's responded, "Watch this space. Strong mail that there is another major change in the wind."
Okay.
It's about 20 minutes ago, so that's fresh off the rumour mill from Demonland. It's interesting just talking about the gender side of things. It reminded me many years ago, Brad Green was talking about women in football. I think it might have been about the time that Peter Searle was breaking new ground as a coach, and he was asked whether a woman would be senior coach of an AFL team at some stage, and he said yes. He thinks that there'll be a woman coaching soon, or someone with a woman's background.
Yep.
I'm thinking about that.
Someone with a woman's back. It was a mistake what he said, but
I was trying to work that out.
I think just a bit of slip of the tongue there. But anyway, moving on.
I think the pleasing thing is that it wasn't sort of a board spill, when you're losing games and strife at the club, that a sort of peaceful handover's always welcome.
I think it might have been just engineered to look that way. It sounds like, reading between the lines of what was sort of said on TV and in the papers today, that he'd lost the support of at least some of the other board members. So I think it all looks very good, but it might not.
Yes,
might not all be that rosy behind the scenes.
That's fine, as long as it doesn't affect the on-field, and that's all that matters, really.
Well, credit to Bartlett for not letting it, for not pushing it, if that is the case, because people can hold on and it can get messy.
Yeah, and I mean, the question mark came about the timing of it. I heard that a number of times in the lead up, listening to the radio, because now that I'm listening to sport again, but talking about the timing of it being curious. We're going 3-0, and it seems a strange time for your president to step down. But the point is a good one in terms of, well, it's actually probably a really good time, because you're getting good. It's not going to create a problem, is it, when the focus is all on the winning? I wonder how much was in it. We talked about it on the podcast last year, and we all had our different views on the on how clever or otherwise his comments were after the Port debacle. I'm pretty clear then I don't reckon it was such a good move, and it's interesting that one of the things that's come out was that it upset Goodwin and certainly impacted the relationship, but I guess that's a pretty obvious. But it's a hard. I don't really have enough information to assess his performance, but we're definitely in a better position now than we were when he became president, and so I think credit has to be given to him for an incredibly tough gig. I think I read on Demonland that at the president's lunch, he just said that he was exhausted and that he doesn't have the energy, and I think that probably picks up your point. He's not. I think he made a comment about people are saying he's not looking well, and he's tired and needs a proper break, was the comment. He can't be, and apparently wasn't very happy about. He said it at the lunch about the leak and the fact that Jay Clark announced it ahead of it. It was supposed to be announced with no one knowing and no one external. And Goodwin said that he got an email that late on the previous night. So even internally, they were keeping it on the down low. So he would have been pretty furious that someone leaked it, not with Jay Clark. I mean, that's what a journo does, doesn't he? Or she. But the fact that someone obviously leaked it to Jay Clark late at night to get it ahead of the announcement, that's pretty poor form. So
no chance that Bartlett leaked it himself.
Well, he apparently was pretty furious. The comment was someone at the lunch on Demonland said he was furious. So he was then sort of, that would be quite Machiavellian, I guess. But yeah, I guess who knows in politics. But with Kate Roffey, I think that, like you said, great. I mean, she's got a fantastic history by all accounts in getting major projects up. And those sorts of projects really require high-level skills in stakeholder management and really good collaboration. And I reckon that's a bit of a gap. And it goes back to my criticism of the club's communication to the most important stakeholders, which are us, the fans. And, the work that she's done with the the Western Melbourne soccer stuff is all about fan engagement. That's who you need to engage with. So I would not be surprised if she comes in and makes some pretty significant changes to communication. And, it's interesting that Bartlett didn't do much communication, and his one bit of communication that he did about the football blew up like a bomb on the footy club.
And because we're on Demonland and we're looking for all sorts of omens and examining animal entrails to try and find trends, you'll recall that in 2013-14 Richmond, I know from sort of my inside knowledge, they had a board that was heavily divided, and they elected Peggy O'Neill to the role of president, and they then brought on a bloke called Brendan Gale to run the club, and then they brought in a couple of coaches of Lepich, Rutten, and Carosella, and 3 years later they're playing off in premiership. So we expect exactly the same sort of returns from Kate.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not 3 years.
Yeah, on a shorter time frame, exactly.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what we can hope for. Yeah.
All right. As I'm quickly sort of fading here, let's move on, and we'll talk about the match coming up. Big man, I might throw it to you in a moment. You're very good with the tactics. Look, this is where my MFCSS is going to start to come up. I'm being a lot more confident this year. I actually went into the Geelong game with some confidence, which shocked me. And this game, I'm very confident, but I'm also, my MFCSS is at the back of my head screaming that this is exactly the type of game we would drop in the past. But I'm also, this is a game we should win and win well. How do you see it playing out?
I think it's a reasonable concern about our performance. One of the positive things about this week is that that's what the media will be saying. The talk will be about, this is exactly the sort of game that a team that's drinking its own bathwater gets ahead of itself, yada, yada.
Don't trust us yet.
Don't trust us yet. Gary Lyon's bound to say it, isn't he? I don't trust them yet. And I'm sure it'll be poured over on probably on Demonland.
I'm sure.
I'll prepare my commentary already. But I think that it is a danger game. And, they've talked about it all season. You only have to be off 2%. And, he's not a magician, Clarkson, but he's definitely tactically pretty strong. Him and Scott are the two coaches who are most, likely to use opposition strengths against them or play that, build their tactics in response. Whereas Melbourne, my point earlier is that identifiable brand. I'm just going to make a Star Trek joke about the three phases between defence and transitioning the ball and up forward. We don't change that. The only change that we make is around tempo. So this whole palaver about no B plan or whatever, I think is a bit of a sort of furphy. Hawthorn do play with different sort of A and B. It's the way Clarkson plays. So, he they may come out and try to run us and transition the ball super quick, which is I suspect is what they'll do, because they're just going to play into our hands if they play slow and chip it around. They're not good enough side. They've got too many poor kicks for that model to work anymore. To make a dent, that you've got to be a West Coast with that level of skill for that model to work. You can even see it with Geelong, how often, as George noted earlier, with pressure on the ball carrier and the receiver, that they were turning it over a lot. Hawks are pretty woeful, to be honest, kicking wise. So I suspect they'll come out and won't play the way they did against Geelong, and they'll look to play youthful, aggressive footy like they did in the second half against Essendon. It won't help, though. They won't be able to get through. And I think that's the thing about having a system. It's not so much a mentality. Of course, you need them all up. But when you've got the best teams have buy-in, we talked to Andy a couple of weeks ago about that documentary. That was the thing that was most notable about Richmond, is the players buy into the system. Melbourne have got that now. So even if we're down a bit, you can rely on the system to protect us a little bit. Whereas previously, if we're down a bit, the system falls apart, and so even an average team can beat us. So, I expect we'll win, and I probably look forward to us winning by 4 or 5 goals, and people complaining that it wasn't a 12-goal win.
Yeah, I'll probably be one of those. George?
Yeah, I think someone on Demonland said it quite succinctly, that we need to beat Hawthorn simply because we would otherwise expect to be beaten by teams like Richmond and like the Western Bulldogs, because we know that they're seriously good sides. But if we want to be serious contenders in this season of 2021, then Hawthorn is one of those sides that we just have to beat. I think we've got, as Bimman just said, we've got the right systems in place now. Hawthorn are not what they used to be by any stretch of the imagination. They really haven't got a forward line. They depend on their small runners to get their goals. As I said, Moore kicked 3 goals this week, and the rest of Hawthorn's goals came from single goals from mainly their midfielders, people like the Wingards and O'Meara's, getting one here and there. They just haven't got a target up forward to kick enough goals to win a game. Just as equally down the back, their back line is dependent on that chap called Frost. I don't know where he came from. Jaff is proving to be a very good defender in his own right, but without Sicily up there to be the glue that's holding the back line together, that it's just all headless chook stuff that we know Frost can play so well. And the rest of their back line are, again, small. So I think they'll really, really struggle to firstly kick a score, but also gives us the opportunity to really hammer home some advantages that we've got this week. Their mids don't worry us. They've got McAvoy and Segler as rucks, but I think we've got the pair in Gawn and Jackson that could more than accommodate them. McAvoy's been lucky this year because it's only a couple of games into the season, but he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, and the pressure of football will get to him as the season progresses. But we're in the right position to win this game, and we should.
Yeah, and I reckon a good, solid, sort of scratchy, I mean, God, it's a new world, isn't it? But like a solid win that, we don't need to come out and beat them by 10 goals to prove something. I mean, of course, that would be great if that's what happens, and our percentage would be all the better for it. But, the good teams bank these games. That's the point you're making, isn't it, George? You look at Richmond, they win these games. And so when they have the sort of game that against Swans where they get taken apart, they're rare and far, when they happen, it's sort of a way outlier. And so serious teams don't drop this game. You don't have to play Hollywood football and win by 12 goals, and the gap between the two teams is evident. A scrappy 30-point win, 25-point win, whatever. You get your 4 points in the bank, and you move on to the bigger and better things. A loss wouldn't be great in terms of the opportunity loss, but and where it puts us. But it's a huge opportunity, isn't it? That's the other thing. To go 5-0 up and bank 20 points at this stage of the season means that finals are almost a lock, you'd have to say. There would be very few teams in the history of footy that have won the first 5 and not made finals at the very least. So it's an important game, and I think the advantage is exactly that point you're making, George, is, they don't really need to motivate them. They'll be saying serious teams win this sort of match. You're a serious football team, or are you? And this team, I think, are pretty committed to showing people that they're a serious team. And there's been a lot of talk about the team element and how committed they are going forward. And the words seem to be backed up by actions this season.
The other interesting thing about our current position is that we're 2 games and percentage already inside the top 8 after 4 rounds. The rest of the teams are so even throughout the whole lot that here's a real opportunity, as you said, to almost guarantee a final spot, because people are just going to start knocking each other off, and nobody getting enough games under their belt to finish where we are at the moment. It's just a remarkable position after 4 rounds.
Yeah, funny you should say that, George. I was thinking that looking at the ladder after the Geelong win, it's a massive. We've got a 2-game break on some of our key rivals, even teams like Brisbane and Sydney, and I think West Coast. How many points are West Coast on? They're only on the 2 wins, aren't they? So a lot of things cards have fallen in our favour this season, with injuries to opposition players, suspensions, losses of teams losing games they shouldn't, our competitors. So, you've got to strike while the iron's hot and take advantage of every bit of good luck you can get, I reckon.
Well, I hope the club has fired up the printing press for those finals brochures. Since you guys have already claimed that's where we're heading.
Yeah, I hope they're already talking about, with our fitness edge, not to have that week before the grand final, because that would disadvantage us with our incredible fitness.
Now you're talking grand finals. Yeah, I just want to, how many times have we played Hawthorn over the last decade plus?
Yeah.
And they've just absolutely mauled us. I wouldn't mind a bit of revenge. Let them be cellar dwellers for a while and cop it at the MCG. Saw too many games where Buddy and Roughhead just tore us apart. So bring in Bren Brown and let's see him wreak some havoc. Great Viney, do you want to add anything before we wrap it up?
No, great analysis from Big Man and George there. I'm more of a see ball, shout ball type supporter. I can't see any of those tactical things, so I'll leave it to the experts.
All right, guys. I'm going to end it here before I fall asleep, and it's got nothing to do with your analysis of the game. I'm fading fast with whatever I've got. All right, thank you, guys. Thank you, Big Man. Thank you, George. Thank you, Great Viney, for joining us. And let's go D's, and we'll see you next week.
Go Red Legs.
Come on, demons. Come on, demons. Come on, demons.